Genealogies in the Bible might seem like dry lists of names, easily skipped over in our reading. But hidden within these long lineages are extraordinary stories, narratives of people whose lives shaped history in ways they never could have imagined. Among them are 5 women whose names stand out, not because they were queens, warriors, or rulers, but because their lives played an irreplaceable role in God's redemptive plan. These women, outsiders, widows, and even those with scandalous pasts, were not the kind of people society would have chosen to be part of a king's lineage. Yet, God did. Their inclusion in the genealogy of Jesus is not just a historical detail. It's a powerful statement about who God chooses, how He redeems broken lives, and how His plans unfold in the most unexpected ways. Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary. These 5 women were far from perfect. Their stories are filled with pain, risk, and controversy. Tamar, a widow twice over, took drastic measures to secure her future. Rahab, a woman labeled by her past, risked everything to align herself with God's people. Ruth, a foreigner from a nation despised by Israel, left everything familiar behind to embrace a new faith. Bathsheba, caught in a scandalous situation with King David, suffered great loss but became the mother of a future king. And Mary, a humble young woman, bore the weight of divine calling amid societal scrutiny. Despite their flaws, hardships, and cultural disadvantages, God wove their lives into His great redemption story. Their presence in Jesus' genealogy speaks volumes. God does not define us by where we come from or by what we've done. He defines us by His grace and His purpose for our lives. Through these women, we see that God's grace is greater than human failure, that His plans transcend cultural norms, and that He calls the willing, the broken, and the overlooked to accomplish His divine purposes. In this video, we're going to uncover the rich, complex, and inspiring lives of these 5 women. We'll walk through their struggles, their bold acts of faith, and the ways God used them to shape the future of His people. Tamar's pursuit of justice, Rahab's courage, and Ruth's loyalty and trust in God, to Bathsheba's story and Mary's unwavering obedience to God's call. Each of these women's lives carries a lesson for us today. Whether you feel unqualified, overlooked, or burdened by past mistakes, their stories reveal that God's grace can rewrite any story. So let's dive in and discover how their faith, resilience, and redemption can encourage and challenge us in our own journey with God. Tamar, the woman who fought for justice. Tamar is the first woman mentioned in Jesus' genealogy in Matthew 1 verse 3. And her story, found in Genesis 38, is one of the most unusual and controversial in the Bible. At first glance, her actions may seem shocking, but upon closer examination, her story is a powerful testimony to perseverance, justice, and divine redemption. Her inclusion in Jesus' lineage is no accident. It serves as a reminder that God can redeem even the most challenging circumstances for His glory. Tamar was a Canaanite woman, making her an outsider in Judah's family. The Canaanites were often seen as enemies of Israel, which makes her presence in the genealogy of Jesus even more remarkable. It is a clear demonstration that God's redemptive plan is not limited by human divisions or cultural expectations. In ancient Israel, the practice of levirate marriage, Deuteronomy 25 verse 5 to 10, was established to protect widows and ensure the continuation of a family line. If a man died without children, his brother was obligated to marry the widow and produce an heir in his name. Tamar married Judah's eldest son, but he was deemed wicked in God's sight and was struck down. According to custom, Er's brother, Onan, was next in line to fulfill the levirate duty. However, Onan refused to give Tamar an heir and was also struck down by God. This left Tamar in a vulnerable position, widowed, childless, and without protection. Judah then promised his youngest son, Shelah, to Tamar when he came of age. However, Judah failed to keep his word, leaving Tamar in limbo, socially and legally disadvantaged. Tamar, recognizing Judah's failure to uphold his responsibility, took a bold and daring step. Disguising herself as a prostitute, she positioned herself along Judah's path. Unaware of her identity, Judah solicited her and left behind his seal, cord, and staff as a pledge of payment. These items were not just personal effects, they were symbols of his identity and authority. Months later, when Tamar was found to be pregnant, she was accused of immorality and faced potential execution. However, at the pivotal moment, she revealed Judah's pledge, proving that he was the father. Judah, confronted with undeniable evidence, made a profound confession: "She is more righteous than I." Genesis 38:26. This statement acknowledges his own failure and vindicates Tamar's actions. Tamar's story is a testament to justice, courage, and faith. Tamar refused to accept injustice passively. Her actions, though unconventional, were driven by a deep sense of righteousness, ensuring that Judah was held accountable for his failure. Despite the brokenness of the situation, God used Tamar to continue the line that would lead to King David and ultimately to Jesus Christ. Tamar's presence in Jesus' genealogy foreshadows the inclusion of Gentiles in God's redemptive plan, emphasizing that His grace extends beyond cultural and social barriers. Tamar's story challenges us to trust in God's plan, even when life does not unfold as expected. It reminds us that He is able to bring justice out of injustice and redemption out of brokenness. Tamar's story is a powerful example of how God's grace can transform even the most unexpected individuals and situations. But she is not alone in this. The next woman in Jesus' genealogy, Rahab, had an even more unlikely background. She was not only an outsider, but also someone whose past might have seemed to disqualify her from God's plan. Yet Rahab's faith changed the course of history. Let's dive into her story and see how God used her in a remarkable way. Rahab, the outsider who became a hero. The next remarkable figure in Jesus' genealogy is Rahab, a woman whose story is both unexpected and inspiring. Rahab was a Canaanite prostitute living in Jericho, a city renowned for its formidable walls and deeply entrenched pagan culture. As a Canaanite, she was considered an outsider to the Israelites, and as a prostitute, she would have been deemed unworthy by many. Yet her faith and courage made her one of the most celebrated figures in the Bible. Her story, found in Joshua 2, powerfully illustrates that no one is beyond the reach of God's grace, and that faith can change the trajectory of a person's life. Jericho was one of the oldest and most fortified cities in the ancient Near East. Its thick, impenetrable walls symbolized strength and security, making its fall seem impossible from a human perspective. The conquest of Jericho would be Israel's first major victory in the Promised Land, and Rahab's role in this pivotal event underscores the power of faith in overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Rahab's home was built into the city wall, which strategically positioned her to assist the Israelite spies. This location provided an escape route for the spies and also played a crucial role in her own salvation. By sheltering the spies, she aligned herself with the God of Israel rather than the doomed city of Jericho. The scarlet cord Rahab hung from her window was more than just a signal for her family's safety. It carried deep symbolic meaning. The red color echoed the blood of the Passover lamb, which had marked the homes of the Israelites for protection in Egypt. This foreshadowed the ultimate salvation through Jesus Christ, whose blood would redeem humanity. Rahab's story begins when two Israelite spies enter Jericho to scout the city before the impending attack. The spies seek refuge in Rahab's house, where she hides them from the king's soldiers. When questioned by the authorities, she misleads them, saying the men had already left the city. Her actions demonstrate not only courage, but also a clear decision to stand with Israel rather than her own people. What makes Rahab's story extraordinary is her confession of faith. Despite being raised in a pagan society, she tells the spies, "The Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below." Joshua 2:11. This declaration is one of the most profound statements of faith in the Old Testament. It reveals that Rahab recognized God's sovereignty and placed her trust in him even before seeing the fulfillment of his promises. In return for her protection, Rahab asks the spies to spare her and her family when Israel conquers Jericho. The spies agree, giving her a simple yet significant instruction. She must tie a scarlet cord in her window so that her household will be recognized and spared during the attack. When the Israelites, under Joshua's leadership, march around Jericho and the walls miraculously collapse, Rahab and her family are indeed saved. They are brought into the Israelite community, marking a dramatic shift in Rahab's identity, from an outsider to a member of God's chosen people. Yet Rahab's story does not end there. She later marries Salmon, a prince of Judah, and becomes the mother of Boaz, who would marry Ruth. Through her lineage, Rahab becomes the great-great-grandmother of King David and ultimately an ancestor of Jesus Christ. Her transformation from a marginalized woman to a key figure in God's redemptive plan is nothing short of miraculous. Rahab's story serves as a profound reminder that God's grace extends to all, regardless of their past or societal status. She was an outsider by nationality and profession, yet her faith positioned her for redemption and honor. Her story challenges us to trust in God's power, even when faced with overwhelming odds. Recognize that God looks at the heart rather than external circumstances, and step out in faith, knowing that God rewards those who seek Him sincerely. Rahab's faith did not just secure her own salvation, it also paved the way for another extraordinary woman in Jesus' lineage, Ruth. Like Rahab, Ruth was an outsider, a Moabite widow who chose to follow the God of Israel. Her loyalty and devotion would make her one of the most beloved figures in Scripture. Let's now explore Ruth's story and see how her faithfulness became a cornerstone of God's redemptive plan. Ruth, the loyal daughter-in-law who found redemption. Ruth's story is one of the most cherished narratives in the Bible, a testament to unwavering loyalty, selfless love, and divine redemption. She was a Moabite widow who made a bold and sacrificial decision to leave her homeland and journey with her mother-in-law, Naomi, to Bethlehem. As a Moabite, Ruth was considered an outsider to Israelite society, and as a widow, she faced a bleak future filled with uncertainty and hardship. Yet, her steadfast devotion to Naomi and her embrace of the God of Israel positioned her within God's grand design. Her story, recorded in the book of Ruth, beautifully illustrates God's provision, faithfulness, and ability to redeem broken circumstances. The Moabites were descendants of Lot, Genesis 19:37, and were often in conflict with Israel, Numbers 22-25, Judges 3, verse 12-30. This hostility made Ruth's choice to align herself with Naomi and the God of Israel even more extraordinary. She willingly abandoned her cultural and religious identity to embrace an unfamiliar faith and people. In ancient Israel, widows were among the most vulnerable members of society. Without a husband or sons, they had little means of support and were often reliant on the kindness of relatives or charity. Naomi's return to Bethlehem as a widow signified a return to an uncertain future, one that Ruth courageously chose to share. The Israelite law allowed the poor to glean the leftovers from the fields after harvest, Leviticus 19, verse 9-10, Deuteronomy 24, verse 19-22. This law was a provision for the marginalized, and it was through gleaning that Ruth found both sustenance and divine favor. One of the most powerful moments in Ruth's story occurs when she refuses to leave Naomi, declaring in Ruth 1, verse 16-17, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried." These words were not merely an emotional expression, but a covenant of devotion. Ruth was pledging her life not just to Naomi, but to the God of Israel, forsaking her past and stepping into an uncertain but divinely orchestrated future. The concept of the kinsman redeemer was an integral part of Israelite culture. It provided a means for preserving family inheritance and protecting the vulnerable. A close relative could redeem land and marry the widow of a deceased family member to ensure the continuation of the family line. Leviticus 25 verse 25, Deuteronomy 25 verse 5 to 10. Boaz, a relative of Naomi's late husband, fulfilled this role. His actions not only secured Ruth's future, but also demonstrated God's providence in orchestrating redemption through human relationships. Ruth's path was marked by loss, perseverance, and eventual restoration. After the deaths of her husband and brother-in-law, Ruth faced the harsh reality of widowhood. Despite Naomi's insistence that she remain in Moab, Ruth refused to abandon her, choosing to journey with her to Bethlehem. In Bethlehem, Ruth took on the lowly task of gleaning in the fields, an act of humility and determination to provide for Naomi. Ruth's hard work caught the attention of Boaz, a wealthy and kind landowner who ensured her safety and provided extra grain for her to gather. Following Naomi's guidance, Ruth approached Boaz on the threshing floor, symbolically requesting him to take on the role of kinsman redeemer. Although another relative had the first right to redeem the land and marry Ruth, Boaz skillfully navigated the legal process and secured the right to marry her. Ruth and Boaz's marriage resulted in the birth of Obed, the grandfather of King David, placing Ruth in the direct lineage of Jesus Christ. Matthew 1 verse 5. Ruth's story demonstrates that even in seasons of loss and hardship, God is actively working behind the scenes to bring restoration. Ruth's unwavering devotion to Naomi is an example of selfless love, reflecting the heart of true commitment. Through simple acts like gleaning and seeking refuge under Boaz's care, Ruth experienced divine provision and favor. Ruth's transformation from a destitute widow to the matriarch of a royal lineage is a powerful illustration of God's redeeming grace. Ruth's story is a testament to God's faithfulness and the beauty of redemption. It highlights how God can transform sorrow into joy and loss into legacy. However, not all stories of redemption begin with noble choices. Some emerge from pain and scandal, revealing God's grace in unexpected ways. This leads us to our next figure, Bathsheba, whose story unfolds amidst tragedy but ultimately contributes to God's sovereign plan for Israel and the lineage of Christ. Bathsheba, the woman who found hope after tragedy. Bathsheba's story is one of the most complex and heartbreaking in the Bible. She was the wife of Uriah, a loyal soldier in King David's army, and later became David's wife after a series of tragic events. Her story, found in 2 Samuel 11 verse 12, is marked by scandal, loss, and ultimately redemption. While her life was deeply affected by the sins of others, Bathsheba's resilience and God's grace would make her a key figure in the lineage of Jesus. Her inclusion in the genealogy reminds us that God can bring beauty from even the darkest ashes. Bathsheba was not just an ordinary woman in Israel. She came from a family of influence. Her father, Eliam, was one of David's mighty men, 2 Samuel 23:34, and her grandfather, Ahithophel, was a trusted counselor to the king. This suggests that Bathsheba was well connected and came from a respected family in Israelite society. The setting of Bathsheba's fateful encounter with David has been widely debated. Many assume she was bathing in a public or visible place, but in ancient Israelite homes, rooftops were often private spaces. Given her noble background, Bathsheba likely observed purification laws and was following ritual cleansing as prescribed in Leviticus 15 verse 19 to 30. David, however, used his vantage point as king to spy upon her, leading to a tragic abuse of power. The prophet Nathan played a pivotal role in confronting David. He told a parable about a rich man who stole a poor man's only lamb, a direct allegory for what David had done to Uriah. When David condemned the man in the parable, Nathan boldly declared, "You are the man," 2 Samuel 12 verse 7. This moment was a turning point in David's life, leading to his deep repentance as recorded in Psalm 51. Bathsheba's story begins with a moment of vulnerability. While her husband Uriah was away at war, King David saw her bathing and summoned her to the palace. In that moment, Bathsheba had little choice. David was not only her king, but also a powerful ruler whose commands could not be easily refused. What followed was a tragic abuse of power that left Bathsheba pregnant and at the center of a desperate cover-up. David, upon learning of her pregnancy, attempted to conceal his sin by bringing Uriah home from war, hoping he would sleep with his wife and believe the child was his. But Uriah, displaying extraordinary loyalty and integrity, refused to enjoy the comforts of home while his fellow soldiers were still in battle. Frustrated, David orchestrated Uriah's death by placing him at the front lines of the war and instructing the troops to withdraw, ensuring his demise. 2 Samuel 11 verse 14 to 17. Bathsheba's grief was compounded when she became David's wife, only for their newborn child to fall gravely ill and die. Yet, in the midst of her pain, God showed her mercy and restoration. She later gave birth to Solomon, who would become one of Israel's greatest kings, known for his wisdom and wealth. But Bathsheba's role in biblical history did not end with Solomon's birth. In 1 Kings 1, as David lay on his deathbed, a power struggle ensued over who would inherit the throne. David had promised that Solomon would reign after him, but another son, Adonijah, attempted to seize the crown. Bathsheba, in partnership with the prophet Nathan, reminded David of his vow. Her wisdom and influence ensured that God's plan for Israel was fulfilled, securing Solomon as king. This pivotal moment solidified Bathsheba's role as a key political figure, not just a passive participant in history. Bathsheba's story is one of redemption. Though marked by tragedy, loss, and betrayal, she became a woman through whom God fulfilled his divine plan. Her inclusion in Jesus' genealogy, Matthew 1:6, is a testament to God's ability to bring beauty from ashes. Bathsheba's life reminds us that God can redeem even the most painful circumstances, and that no situation is beyond his power to restore. Bathsheba's journey is a powerful reminder that God's grace is greater than human failure. Through her, we see that God can use brokenness to bring forth his divine purposes. Now we turn to the final woman in Jesus' genealogy, Mary, the humble servant whose obedience changed the course of history. Unlike Bathsheba, Mary's story is not one of scandal, but of divine favor and faith. Let's explore how Mary's willingness to surrender to God made her the chosen vessel for the fulfillment of his greatest promise, the birth of the Messiah. Mary, the humble servant who bore the Messiah. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is the final woman in his genealogy and the culmination of God's redemptive plan. Her story, found primarily in Luke 1, is one of humility, obedience, and unwavering faith. Mary was a young woman from Nazareth, a small, insignificant town in Galilee. Yet, God chose her to play the most pivotal role in human history, to bear the Messiah, the Savior of the world. Her life is a testament to the power of surrender and the beauty of trusting God's plan, even when it seems impossible. Mary was likely a teenager when the angel Gabriel appeared to her, making her faith and obedience even more remarkable. In a culture where young women had little voice or influence, Mary's willingness to say yes to God's plan is extraordinary. Mary's song of praise, known as the Magnificat, Luke 1 verse 46 to 55, is a profound declaration of God's mercy, justice, and faithfulness. It echoes themes found throughout Scripture, showing Mary's deep understanding of God's character and his promises. Mary's life was marked by both joy and sorrow, from the miraculous birth of Jesus to the heartbreak of watching him die on the cross. Mary's faith never wavered. Her presence at the cross, John 19, verse 25 to 27, is a powerful reminder of her devotion to her Son and her trust in God's plan. Mary's story begins with a visit from the angel Gabriel, who delivers a message that would change her life forever. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. Luke 1, verse 31 to 32. Mary's response is one of the most profound statements of faith in the Bible. I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. Luke 1:38. Mary's journey of faith was not without challenges. She faced the stigma of an unexpected pregnancy, the hardship of giving birth in a stable, and the pain of watching her son suffer and die. Yet, through it all, Mary remained steadfast in her trust in God. Her presence at the cross is a testament to her unwavering love and devotion. Even in Jesus' darkest hour, Mary stood by him, fulfilling her role as his mother and as a faithful servant of God. When Jesus from the cross entrusted her into the care of his beloved disciple John, it demonstrated the deep bond they shared and the honor God placed on her role. Mary's story doesn't end at the cross. She witnessed the resurrection of Jesus, the fulfillment of God's promises, and the birth of the early church. In Acts 1:14, she is seen praying with the disciples, playing an integral role in the community of believers. Her life is a beautiful example of how God can use ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things when they surrender to His will. Mary's story is a testament to the power of surrender. Her willingness to trust God's plan changed the course of history. It reminds us that God's plans often require us to step out in faith even when the path ahead is uncertain. Mary's life challenges us to say yes to God no matter the cost, and to trust that He is always faithful to His promises. Through her example, we learn that true faith is not just about believing, but also about yielding our lives to God. Mary's humility, courage, and unwavering trust serve as an inspiration for all who seek to follow God's will, regardless of the challenges they may face. These 5 women, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary, were not perfect, but their lives reveal a powerful truth. God's grace is greater than our failures, our past, and even our cultural limitations. Tamar's boldness, Rahab's faith, Ruth's loyalty, Bathsheba's resilience, and Mary's surrender, each of their stories reminds us that God's redemptive plan includes everyone, no matter their background or struggles. Their inclusion in Jesus' genealogy is a testament to God's love for the broken, the overlooked, and the unlikely. It's a reminder that no one is beyond the reach of His grace. What about you? Are there areas in your life where you feel unworthy or overlooked? Maybe you've made mistakes, faced rejection, or feel like your story doesn't matter. Remember, God's grace is for you too. Just as He used these 5 women to fulfill His purposes, He can use your story in ways you never imagined. Your past doesn't define you, and your struggles don't disqualify you. God sees your heart, and He has a plan for your life. If this message inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let them know that no matter what they've been through, God's grace is enough. Don't forget to subscribe to Bible Stories That Grow Your Faith for more stories of faith and courage that will encourage and challenge you. And finally, let us know in the comments which woman's story resonated with you the most. Was it Tamar's boldness, Rahab's faith, Ruth's loyalty, Bathsheba's resilience, or Mary's surrender? We'd love to hear how their stories have impacted you. Thank you for joining us, and remember, your story matters to God.